So again, the standard pattern is we are going to extend JFrame and then put our stuff in it. So what we have here are I have one JPanel that's going to hold the buttons. Again, this is a fairly standard thing that I think is basically done. If I have buttons, I don't want to just directly put them into the content pane. I will typically put them into a panel and put the panel into the content pane. That's that Russian nesting dial thing. So I'm going to have two buttons. One is like before. I'm going to have an exit button, and I'm going to have another button that says, "Okay, let's open a file." That's going to correspond with file open, which you usually see. They're going to be into a button panel. And then here's, I don't do anything with it yet in this particular one, but I'm going to save I'm going to take the file I've selected and I'm going to set this instance variable to what that file is. As before, I have a, so here's all I'm going to do. When I select the file, I'm going to put the name of the file in the title. In fact, if you notice here in NetBeans, what NetBeans does is, if you can see, it puts the title of your project, of the current project, in the title bar. So we're going to do that. That's all we're going to do. We're going to select the file. We're going to put its name in the title bar. But before we do, there's actually going to be either nothing there, I think. Okay, yeah. Okay, first I'm going to set the title to nothing. And then, but I'm going to set the title here to just what's called the simple name of the class. You don't have to worry too much about this. But then, again, we're going to do nothing on close, and I'm going to put it in here to make sure that it happens. And then I'm going to initialize my components. So here's my window closer, and I'll show you how. And again, I'm adding that as a window listener, as I did before. Here's my button panel. So I'm going to add my button panel to the north of my content pane. And I'm going to have two buttons. One's going to be my exit button. Again, that's going to be just as we did before, where it's going to have this window closer, which is both a window listener and an action listener. And then my open file is going to have an open file action corresponding to it. So let's first look at what that, let's look at the window closing thing, because if you've seen the video, typically what happened yesterday, it was just another a brain fart on my part that had to do with the fact that where I was instantiating this was after I've added it to the button, so that's why it wasn't responding to it. So that's why I was confused. So I've done something a little bit different here with this that I just wanted to point out. In the window closer class, again, it's a window adapter for all that. It's a window listener and an action listener. So the window, what I've done is I've written, this is just a regular class, and so I've written a method, one method that's going to confirm the exit, I'm going to call it, and that's going to do all this option pane thing. So this is going to prompt the user, say, do you really want to exit? And if the user says yes, we'll exit. If the user says cancel, we're not. But now I'm going to call that from window closing and also the action performed. And so I will get exactly the same response. I'm guaranteed exactly the same response, regardless of whether I do it from the button or whether I do it by closing the window. And that's guaranteed because exactly the same code is being executed. That's the only way to guarantee the same result. Okay, so let's look at this open file action. This is where things there are a couple of things that I want to show you here. So Again, this is a class. It's an inner class, and it has I've declared an instance variable, which is where my file chooser is. And the reason, now I have two choices. I can actually have this as an instance variable of the outer class or as of the inner class. Which is which? They both work. You can make a case for both of them. The reason I do it here is the principle of minimum scope. In other words, the outer class has no reason to even know about this file chooser. This class, this open file action class, an instance of that, is the only one that knows or cares about what this file chooser is about. Okay, so that's now, if you are writing one and you decide to put this in the outer class, again, this is one of these things that's more of style, or what I consider to be good style, versus something which is it wouldn't be a mortal sin to put this in the outer class. But again, the principle of minimum scope says I put this in the smallest possible case here. Okay, so remember that an action listener will respond to a component being manipulated by firing an action event, hearing an action performed method, which will pass an action event. And in this particular case, we're not doing anything with the action event. There's actually information in there, as we've seen previously. But this is another thing, and it's called lazy instantiation, and it's a corollary of the programmer virtue of laziness, which says, now see, notice that ordinarily, when I have an instance variable that's an object, normally I would instantiate that in the constructor. And it would not be the worst thing in the world if I were to write a constructor that would instantiate this. But there's another, the principle of laziness, in my opinion in this case, kind of overrides that. And the laziness says, I'm going to instantiate this when I need it, and not a moment before. Maybe that would be the principle of procrastination. So what this says is, when I hear this action performed event and my file chooser is null, I'm going to instantiate it. And if it's not null, that means I've already previously instantiated it, and so it just skips over that. Okay, so that's, now I just wanted to show that to you. If you were to just kind of use what we've been talking about all quarter instead, you would instantiate this in the constructor, and then that would make sure that you wouldn't get a null pointer exception. The other thing is that notice I put a dot here. You know what the dot represents?
No.
No. Okay. That's actually a throwback to sort of the Unix. Dot represents the current directory. So what this does is this makes sure that when I open my file chooser, when it opens up, it's going to open up in the current working directory. And the current working directory is wherever you're running it from. If I'm running it from the command line, it's whatever directory that is. When I'm running it from NetBeans, the current working directory is the root of my project on the file system. That's all that does. Okay, so what are we doing? What we are doing is we are letting the user choose a file, and all we're going to do is we're going to set the title of our frame to be the name of that file. That's all we're doing. Now, obviously, at some point, we want to do more with that file, and we will, but first things first. So the file chooser has a method called showOpenDialog. And I can put a null here, but what you really want to do is you want to put a parent component. And in this case, the parent component is the outer object, an instance of the outer object. And remember that the this of the outer object is the name of that outer object dot this. Okay, so what this will do is this will show the open dialog. It's a modal dialog. It's going to block everything except threads that are running off the graphics thread. And the result is going to be what comes back. Like the message, the confirm dialog, if I've said yes or okay or open, I forget exactly what the button says, but if it's an approve, then that means I've chosen a file. If I've canceled, then that means I've done nothing. So what I do is if I've approved, now I'm going to set my file to the selected file, and then I'm going to set the title of my program to be the name of that file. That's all. So when I run this, again, if I wanted to for demonstration purposes, sometimes you can put this main method in there, but that in my view is not a very good style. So again, I'm just creating an instance of this. I'm setting its size, and then this is how I run the thing. And I've talked about all that before. Okay, so let's see this in action. Okay, so here's my thing. So I can make it bigger. So that just the exit thing is working on both things. Okay, fine. No, sorry. So here's the open file. And remember that what I had done was the open file button has the open file, an instance of the open file action as its action listener. And so when I click on that, it opens up in this case, a fairly stripped down file chooser, and I can select a file. And okay, now if I cancel, then nothing happens. And notice that the title is the name of the class, the FileChooser demo class, but that's going to change as soon as I select a file. So when I select a file and I say open, now what's changed is the title of the file I've selected. If I choose another one, then it's there. And if I cancel, then nothing happens. Now,
What's the end?
Pardon me?
Result?
Yes, result is, excellent question. The result is whether or not I've chosen to say open or cancel. So result, I don't know what the actual value of it is, but what they've done is they have a number of public static variables that correspond to what that int is going to be. And that's a more effective way to kind of do things. In other words, this is either approve or cancel option. I think cancel option is another. Like if the user canceled and I wanted to do something else, then I would have something like that. But so the int that gets returned tells me which of those buttons I've clicked. Is that? In other words, when I open, I can either cancel or I can open. If I cancel, then nothing happens. Now, if you want to see that in action, what I can do is I can run this in debug mode. So I'll put a breakpoint there, and if I debug the file, then when I open the file and choose it, Okay. Oops, I put the breakpoint in the wrong place. Let's put the breakpoint here. Okay, so now, when I take the next step, okay, it's going to show me this. Now the value of result in this case is 0, and approve option happens to be 0 as well. So I don't know or care what those are. All I care is whether it's been approved or not. And so when I do that, then I see that the name has done there. Okay, so that's the introduction to the file chooser, and then tomorrow what we'll do